You know, when I was a young child, I remember my room vividly. And my mom had this crocheted owl that was about 3 feet tall with a big old stick on top, big smaller stick on the bottom that looked like the owl was perching on it. Fuzzy eyes. It was kind of darkish yarn. It was very creepy looking. My mom thought it was great, loved it, and thought it belonged in my room. And then right outside my doorway in the hall was an old 1800s type photo of one of my relatives, great great aunt or somebody like that, that had that, that look. There was no smile, and it was the old photo looking thing, and it was equally creepy. And so at night, when I would go to bed, my parents would leave the hall light on, my door would stay open. And I'd lay in my bed, and if I looked to the right, there was just enough light that I could see that creepy owl. And if I looked to the left, I could see out the hallway and see that creepy photo. And the thing about that photo at night, I swear it seemed like the eyes were always looking at me, even though they were actually looking the other direction. But it looked like they were looking at me, and it was creepy. And so what I would do is, didn't matter what the temperature in the room was, I would take all the covers, put them up over my head, and I'd just hide up under my covers. And I would sit there. And it didn't matter how hot I got, even if I started sweating, I would keep those covers over my head until my dad would poke his head in my room. And he'd do this pretty much every night that I can remember. And he'd randomly pop his head in and say my name. Come on. Yeah. And I'd be sweating, I'd be all hot. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, well, I was a little cold. And he'd just kind of chuckle, and then he'd head on to bed too. And all it would take would be him showing up for that brief second, and I would suddenly not be afraid. And I would find peace, and I'd be able to sleep. And boy, that sure reminds me of what's going on right now. And it reminds me of it even more when I think of our gospel reading for this week, which actually continues with John 20, but we're starting with verse 19. I encourage you to give it a read if you'd like before Sunday. Beth is going to talk to us a lot more about it, but I'm keyed in on those first few verses starting with 19. And what's happening there is the disciples, it's still that first day of the week, so Jesus was resurrected in the morning, and that evening, the disciples are gathered together. We don't know how many. We're not told who all's there or anything like that. But we know they're gathered together, and it says they were afraid. The doors were locked. They had the covers over their head. And all of a sudden, boom, Jesus appears. He says, "Peace be with you." And in that instant, they find peace, and they start to celebrate, and all those type things. They're excited. And all it took was Jesus showing up. And I realized this time, this season that we're all living in, when we're isolated and socially distant, still spiritually connected. But this time when we're locked in our rooms or locked in our houses, or we're trying to stay away from everyone and all that stuff, and it is partially fear, yes. But I realize there are moments that we all can have where God shows up, where Jesus shows up and says, "Hey, peace be with you." And I've had lots of those moments. I've got to go on walks with my family a lot, just around our neighborhood. It's been amazing. And in those walks, Jesus is showing up and saying, "Peace be with you." Afternoon coffee. This is my morning coffee, which I find it there too. Jesus showing up saying, "Peace be with you." It's those little things, those small moments where we can say, man, I saw God. I see it in the extra time I get to spend with my family. I see it in Zoom meetings I get to have with the youth group. We're all hanging out together online, and we're talking and laughing, and it's Jesus showing up and saying, "Peace be with you." So in this time, just like when my dad would stick his head in the room, that was God saying, "Hey, peace be with you." That's Jesus showing up. Peace be with you. And so I would encourage you to take a few moments and Look for those times where you know that Jesus showed up and said, "Peace be with you." I'm sure you can find them. I hope you find those moments and you're able to recognize them and realize that that's Jesus showing up saying, "Hey, peace be with you." Have a good week. Take care.